Over the previous 5 NFL drafts, there have been a total of 19 quarterbacks taken, and all faced similar pressure that the 2025 class now faces. Some have flourished in the position, while others seem to be falling on their face. In today's video, I want to go over all 19 quarterbacks' careers thus far and rank them on a tier list based off how well they have performed in the NFL to this point. The rankings will be divided into 5 tiers, with the highest being elite, all the way down to bust.
I'm about to bust.
My rankings are based on overall performance, team success, and career trajectory. That last part will play a big factor into my rankings for quarterbacks selected in 2023 and especially in 2024. This is all meant to be in good fun, and at the end of the day, these could be some freezing cold takes in as little as 12 months. And starting in the 2020 draft, Joe Burrow was selected by the Bengals with the number 1 overall pick. Thus far in his career, it has been up and down, but that's mostly due to injuries. Because when he's on the field, it is very hard to argue that he is not a top 3 quarterback in this league. He has made the playoffs twice, including 2 AFC championship games, and has made 1 Super Bowl. He had led the league in passing yards, pass touchdowns this past season, but now has failed to make the playoffs in 2 straight years.
It's not your fault. Why is it so hard?
When it's all said and done, there are very few that I will mention in this list that can already say they could, alright, I might be biased as a Who Dey fanatic, but could make the Hall of Fame. So my final verdict for Joe Burrow, elite. Up next is Tua Tagovailoa, who was drafted by the Dolphins with the 5th overall pick. He would begin his career with the injury-prone label, and he has yet to quite shake that off. His career started off rough for those first few seasons and was slowly being considered a potential bust until 2023, when Tua finally broke out. He would lead the league in passing yards and would earn his first ever Pro Bowl nod, but would fail to make noise in the playoffs. Tua is good on the field, but has only had 1 great season. Combined with the lack of January success and continued injuries, my final verdict for Tua Tagovailoa would just have to be good for now. Drafted by the Chargers with the next pick, we have Justin Herbert. Out of this entire draft class, Herbert was the best if you're just looking at the rookie season. He even broke the record for most passing touchdowns for a rookie with 31 that still stands to this day. Herbert remained a top 10 quarterback for the next 2 seasons and even earned a Pro Bowl, but beginning in 2023, he would begin to regress, and in this past season in Jim Harbaugh's run-first offense, had some of the lowest numbers of his career, but much less turnover-prone. Overall, Herbert already has nearly 140 passing touchdowns and a Pro Bowl, but is 0-2 in the playoffs. Still, you can't ignore his first 3 seasons as good as they were, despite the next 2 not being the very best. So I will have to give Herbert a star rating. And we now have the final first-round quarterback selected in 2020, that being Jordan Love. Love began his career holding a clipboard as he would back up Aaron Rodgers for his first 3 seasons. In 2023, Love finally got his chance and looked rough in the first half of the season, but was a different quarterback altogether in the second. With 18 touchdowns and just 1 interception in the final 8 games, Love proved just what he was capable of. In his 2 seasons as a starter, he has taken the Packers to the playoffs twice and even winning a playoff game, something a lot of these guys have yet to do. Love doesn't have a Pro Bowl nod, nor any other accolades, but since he's just getting started, he could very well climb this tier list in the future. But until that happens, I cannot put him any more than good. And this is a good place for me to mention this. Left to right does matter on my tier list. I'm not going to fix it now, but rather at the end of the video. Moving on to the 2021 draft class, we begin with Trevor Lawrence. He was one of the most hyped prospects probably since Andrew Luck back in 2012. Yet despite going into year 5, Lawrence has yet to really live up to those expectations. He had 1 fantastic season in 2022 that got Jags fans excited for the future, going 9-8 and even winning a playoff game against Herbert's Chargers in the comeback thriller. But since 2022, Lawrence can hardly be called a top 15 quarterback in the league. For a guy that was as highly touted as he was, we do sometimes forget that Lawrence isn't a bad quarterback, but rather hasn't lived up to expectations. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I will leave him in the good tier for now. Following Lawrence was Zach Wilson, and immediately Wilson would struggle to get anything going. Despite having good pieces around him, he would just look lost in that offense. By 2023, the Jets had moved on from the moment that they traded for Aaron Rodgers. Wilson would be shipped to Denver, where he was Bo Nix's backup before signing with the Dolphins for this upcoming season. He could always turn it around, as he's only 25 years old and does have a cannon for an arm. But thus far in his career, the number 2 overall pick is our first bust. Immediately after Wilson was Trey Lance when he was drafted by the Niners at number 3. San Fran gave up a king's ransom to acquire the then 20-year-old, as he had all the tools to be the next great Niner. But when Lance got his shot, he did not look great, which was made even more apparent when 1, you realize he was in a Kyle Shanahan offense, which has always been friendly towards quarterbacks, and 2, when Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy would take the reins and looked to be the best quarterback they've had in a long time. Purdy would even take the Niners to the NFC Championship. So as a result, Lance would then be shipped to Dallas before signing with the Chargers in 2025 to be a backup to Herbert. Lance at this point is no more than a backup with untapped potential. So unfortunately, we are going to have back-to-back busts. Many thought that Justin Fields could finally be the quarterback that Chicago had been waiting for years, decades? Fields had some up and down seasons, but seemed to get better as time went on. The problem was that Chicago was in a dilemma where they found themselves in the position to have the number 1 overall pick. This would result in Chicago moving on from Fields, shipping him to Pittsburgh, where he had a chance to compete for the starting position. And while he definitely showed flashes, especially with his mobility, he just could never take that deep shot down the field, so the Steelers would move on to Russell Wilson once he was healthy, and they never looked back. Fields does seem to be on his final chance, as he appears to be the guy for the Jets in 2025. Many felt that Fields never really got a fair shot in Chicago, as there was rarely any help for him to develop. He is still an amazing runner, and that's an asset that could keep him in the league, especially if he can get into a system that can showcase what he can do. Until that happens, we can only put him in the average tier. The final first-round quarterback in 2021 would be Mac Jones. By far and away, he had the hugest shoes to fill in NFL history. And at first, you would have thought that Jones was fitting in quite well in New England. He had a great rookie season and even finished second in Rookie of the Year voting behind only Jamar Chase. And while he did get cooked in the playoffs, he still made the playoffs. Unfortunately for Mac, it was just a downhill spiral after 2021. New England did him no favors, hiring Matt Patricia of all guys to be his offensive coordinator, so as a result, Jones was out after year 3 and is now a backup in San Francisco for the upcoming 2025 season. Things can always change in the NFL, but given that he only had 1 good season and has looked straight awful since, this may be a bit harsh, but I have to put him as a bust. Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback taken in round 1 of a particularly weak draft. Pickett had the burden of replacing Pittsburgh great Big Ben, but could not live up to expectations. He did show flashes, but he never had anything to say that he was the guy. It didn't help that he had Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator, and when Canada was eventually fired, Pickett actually threw for 300 yards in the very next game, but was injured shortly thereafter. And while the Steelers would sign Russell Wilson in the 2024 offseason, they didn't necessarily want to give up on Pickett yet, but the 2022 first round pick would request a trade, and he would be shipped to Philly to be a backup. In 2025, Pickett would be sent now to Cleveland, where he looks to rewrite the narrative that he was a bust in the league. And for that fact, that a team is willing to trot him out in week 1 to be their starting quarterback, I can't fully get behind the idea of bust. So with that, as much as I want to put him in the bust, I'll leave him in average for now. Bryce Young was selected as the first overall pick in the 2023 draft. This is the year where the Panthers went all in to get their young quarterback, giving up a first round pick in the process. He was definitely set up to fail in Carolina. Young had next to nothing in terms of a competent roster and an impatient owner. His head coach would be fired midway into his first season, and the team would finish 2-15. Year 2 was so bad at first that he would be benched for Andy Dalton, but would return by week 7. And week 7 and beyond, Young did appear to turn the corner. The team, who was still pretty depleted of talent, would go 4-6 in this stretch, which included 11 touchdowns to 3 interceptions in Young's final 8 games. Young, through the first season and a half, would have been considered a bust. Yet, the second half of 2024 being a bit of a career renaissance, I am actually fine with leaving him in average for now. Stroud would come off the board next at number 2 with the Houston Texans, and when he was drafted, the Texans were coming off a catastrophic end to the Deshaun Watson era, so they were not expected to do much, but that couldn't be further from the case. He would guide this Houston team that was projected to win just 5 games to a 10-7 record. Stroud would throw 23 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions, earning a Pro Bowl, and would win Rookie of the Year. In the playoffs, he was magic in the wild card game when he would throw for 274 yards and 3 touchdowns to no interceptions in a rout against Cleveland. Year 2 would be a bit of a sophomore slump, but he was still able to guide the Texans to a 10-7 record, and that's despite his wide receivers continuously battling injuries, and they would make the playoffs again. Overall, Stroud looks already to be in the upper tier of NFL greats, and going into year 3, I believe Stroud will be in the conversation for MVP. He's in a good system, and if his head coach DeMeco Ryans continues to evolve Stroud, he will be here to stay for a long time. So my final verdict is that we now have our second elite quarterback. Richardson would be the next and final quarterback taken in round 1 of 2023, going to the Indianapolis Colts. He was able to win the starting position for week 1 and actually looked impressive in his brief run. Unfortunately, 2023 was cut short due to a shoulder injury that would require season-ending surgery at just 4 games. In the following season, Richardson looked lost at times, as he would deal with more injuries as well as a controversial moment that I'm sure influenced his benching in the season as well. Overall, Richardson has only started 15 total games across 2 seasons, so there is still time for him to not only improve, but also mature. At only 23 going into year 3, anything can happen. Based off the work we've seen and the fact that he is slowly acquiring the injury-prone label though, I cannot put him any higher than average. Going into 2024, there was no question who was going number 1 in the draft. Chicago would grab the USC quarterback, and immediately Chicago would go all in, getting their guy all the tools he needed to be great. Drafting Romeo Dunze and adding Keenan Allen to pair with DJ Moore, Williams and the Bears would actually get off to a hot start, going 4-2 heading into their bye week and keeping up with the rest of the NFC North. But something would go horribly wrong. Chicago would lose 10 straight before knocking off the Packers in week 18 to finish 5-12. Caleb was sacked a league-leading 68 times, but did toss 20 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. And here's where I think people misunderstand Caleb Williams' rookie season. Most of Chicago's problems were not really on his shoulders. I mean, how can you blame him for this? Overall, dealing with coaching incompetence, a bad O-line, and the hype behind him, Williams actually did pretty good, all things considered. He does get a bad rap for his zesty off-the-field antics, and also being outshined by the next quarterback we will be discussing, so don't get it twisted, ladies and gentlemen. Caleb Williams is pretty good. Jaden Daniels would go to the Washington Commanders at number 2, a Commanders team who had been spiraling now for 2 decades. Similar to Stroud, expectations were low, yet Daniels more than exceeded them. Combining passing and rushing, Daniels would eclipse 400 yards in 8 of his 17 games. He would earn Rookie of the Year, a Pro Bowl nod, and even had votes in the MVP race. But what separates Daniels from his contemporaries is that he was successful in the playoffs. He would guide Washington to an upset win against Tampa in the wild card, then would pulverize the number 1 seeded Lions before being shell-shocked themselves by the eventual Super Bowl champions. In short, Daniels' arrival signaled the end for the Commanders being a laughingstock in the NFL. If we just counted the regular season, I would have just gone star. But after the playoffs, especially that game against the Lions, how can I not put him in elite tier? Drake May was brought into New England to get back to their winning ways. He wouldn't start right away, but found his way to starting quarterback by week 6 and had about as good of a season as a bottom 5 team could be. He tossed 15 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, 2,276 passing yards, and even made the Pro Bowl as an alternate. You can't help but be impressed. The Patriots probably had one of the worst teams in the league, with probably the worst wide receiving core and just the 22nd best defense, yet still looked good given the circumstances. May looks to be on pace to be a great quarterback in the league. He will, though, have to overcome more than most to make it happen. So my final verdict for Drake May is that he is good. The Falcons would shock the world when they would take Michael Penix Jr. with the 8th overall pick after just paying Kirk Cousins handsomely in the offseason. Penix wasn't meant to play right away, but found himself in the lineup after Cousins gave the Falcons every reason to bench him. In 5 games and 3 total starts, Penix threw 3 touchdowns to 3 interceptions for 775 yards. There still really isn't much film on him to decide one way or another, so we will have to put him in a new tier of his own that we will label incomplete. This brings us to our next player in JJ McCarthy, who was selected by Minnesota at number 10. McCarthy's year would end before it could even begin, tearing his meniscus in the preseason, missing his entire rookie year. The Vikings were still confident enough in their young quarterback that they were willing to let Sam Darnold walk in free agency, but given that there's no footage of him in any regular season football, he joins Penix in the incomplete category. We finally get to our final quarterback of the list, and that being Bo Nix. Nix would win the starting job in Denver, and his performance was nothing short of fantastic. The team would go 10-7, and he would show off his great passing abilities, tossing 29 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, 3,775 yards, but that's not all, as he proved to be a capable runner, totaling 430 yards on the ground and adding another 4 touchdowns. He is definitely overshadowed by Jaden Daniels in his rookie class, and being saddled in the AFC, where most of the elite quarterbacks play, is doing him no favors. So his rookie season, in my opinion, has been severely underrated. No one is really talking about the monster as a team brewing in Denver, as Bo Nix and that elite Broncos defense coached by Sean Payton could surprise many. So my final verdict for Bo Nix is that he is good. Now that we have everyone on the board, I will quickly off-screen adjust my picks as left to right matters on my tier list. Alright, what do you guys think? My top 3 is Burrow, Stroud, and Daniels, and I'm sure people are not going to like Herbert being by himself in a tier below, or even Love in a tier below that. After covering everyone on this list, there was one more guy that I know wasn't drafted in round 1, but gets talked about and compared to his peers as if he was, that being Jalen Hurts. Despite that, Hurts, among not only the 2020 class, but all 5 mentioned, is the most successful, appearing in 2 Super Bowls and winning 1. So I had to give him an honorable mention, so I leave it up to you. Where would Hurts rank on my tier list? Comment down below. But that's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. If you've made it this far, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Shout out to my one and only member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and believing in the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel too, consider becoming a member. That's going to do it, guys. Thank you guys as always. But until next time, shaboy!